Am I? Am I?
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Semai Hagos. I'm a freshman at Seattle Pacific University. I just graduated from Ballard High School, and I'm the vice president for the Washington State NAACP Youth Council. And this is, I believe, my second time working with Rare, like on a panel, and it's good to be here. The topic of gun violence is really is something that's very important to me because just growing up, like a lot of students my age have been impacted in such a horrible way by gun violence. And so it just kind of feels natural for me to do some work involved with that. So it's good to be here.
Thank you. William.
Hi, everybody. My name is William. My pronouns are they, she, he. I'm a senior at Ballard High School. Um, and I'm also with the NAACP Youth Council. I'm the treasurer of the group. And um, the school that I'm at, Ballard, is part of SPS, Seattle Public Schools, and there's been a lot of cases of violence at a lot of these schools, mainly gun violence. There's been some other weapons around some of the schools also, but mainly gun violence, and I mean that impacts a lot of students and a lot of like even if you don't go to a school that's been impacted, a ton of students at every school have friends that go to the other schools. Everybody knows each other, so everybody's impacted when something happens. So it's just really important to address.
Thank you. Cheaton, back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thank you all for sharing your experiences. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Bruce for a land acknowledgement.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for logging in tonight. We would like to show our respect and acknowledge the Puget Sound Salish peoples, past and present, on whose lands we gather today. The Suquamish Tribe and Muckleshoot Indian Tribe are federally recognized Indian tribes of Greater Seattle under the treaties of Point Elliott and Medicine Creek. In recognizing the history and respecting the sovereignty of Washington's Indian nations, Rare honors the heritage of indigenous communities and their significant role in shaping the course of this region. Further, we respectfully acknowledge the millions of enslaved Africans who provided exploited labor on which this country was built with little or no recognition. Similarly, we acknowledge the labor of other peoples who, while not enslaved, were exploited and whose labor also contributed to the building of America. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Alrighty, well, just some last final housekeeping things. If you have any questions that you would like to ask the panelists as a follow-up to any of our questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll be incorporating your questions into the discussion today when I can. And last but not least, I'm going to turn it back to our panelists. Panelists, thanks again for coming today. Um, I know you all went into a little bit about why you're here. But if there's anything else you all would like to say or kind of acknowledge each other's experiences about how, although being in different geographical locations and different age groups, kind of having a similar experience, you're definitely welcome to do so now.
I feel like kind of you touched on it, she does. The fact that like even if you are in different age groups, you still have like the common sense of fear that wherever you go, whether that be at school, whether that be at a mall, or whether you're just out with your friends, there's like that sense of fear and kind of just paranoia that like you are susceptible to any sort of like danger because of gun violence. You don't know who has a gun, you just don't know. So that's just kind of like something shared among especially the youth.
I also want to add to Fiona's statement that I feel like we just live in like a society that's progressively getting more dangerous. Um, I don't know. I just want to like real quick share like a story. So last week on Tuesday, it was New Year's Eve, I like went out to the store and I was like by myself, I just wanted to like get some stuff. I wanted to like make drinks. And this like guy started to like he was like on his way out, like to leave the store, but then he kind of like, as soon as I went in, he like parked his car, went in, and started like kind of following me and like started confronting me, and he was like asking me like if I lived around here, like and stuff like that. And I was just so paranoid because I was always thinking, like I was talking with my family and we were thinking like if we had like a way to protect ourselves, like we wouldn't have to worry about someone like coming to harm us, if that makes sense. Because I just hear a lot of stories about just like dangerous, how it's like so dangerous, especially if you live alone and especially if you're like a young girl. And I kind of just thought about that and how that connected to like gun violence because I feel like we have the fear that someone else could kind of cause harm on us, like with a gun, and then how we also kind of like think of gun violence or think of like how guns are important for us in terms of like self-defense. And I feel like that's something that is often kind of like overlooked. And it was just kind of a thought that came to me.
I can share something that's been happening with my school. We've had a lot of changes this year, specifically for the just a lot of different things. Some of them are for um specifically school safety, and some of them don't have the intention of being changed for school safety, but do impact school safety. So one thing that my school has started doing is they've started locking all the doors out. Like they've started locking all the doors to the school, which I understand that, you don't want people coming into the school. But what they do is they leave a few doors unlocked, and those are the main doors, the doors that anybody that's visiting would want to go through, um, which is kind of counterintuitive. And then they leave a bunch of doors that students would want to like the ones that students would be using, like by the portables and by the outdoor classes. Um, they leave those ones locked, so students end up getting locked outside of school whenever they're a couple minutes late, or whenever lunch is over, whenever there's a drill, students get locked outside because the doors lock. So that just it doesn't really protect people. People can still get inside the school if they want to. It just inconveniences people. It's just performative. And meanwhile, something else that they're doing is they made it so that in all classes, students must bring their phones to the front of the class for all class, and students are not allowed to be on their phones. Like they've really cracked down on that, and that's so that they say that's that students basically focus better in class. But another effect of that is that if there is an emergency, students won't be able to contact the authorities. They won't be able to contact their family. Nobody's going to have time to run to the front of the class and grab their phone before running away. Everything that people, they're just very performative about things, and they don't actually um, think their policies through before implementing them. They don't really care about this type of safety.
William, I want to touch on a point to bring back to our panelists. I think you mentioned it. What measures, if any, has your school implemented or did implement to prevent or prepare for a possible incident of gun violence? But I think more importantly, how did those measures make you feel?
Are you asking me specifically or just the panelists?
The panel in general.
Okay.
For my school, they had like meetings and meetings and meetings about whether or not they should just like if they should ban phones at schools, like put them in the whatever you call them, like the phone cubbies and stuff like that. But just luckily in the like they came to the realization that that's just not safe. Also, my school campus is located in the middle of Capitol Hill. It's on 13th Avenue, right next to Broadway, which is just always in our campus, kind of like open campus. We have a building that's 3 blocks away from our main campus. So we're constantly walking from building to building. And that was just hearing that, I was just like, how could you even like think that? But luckily that's not the case. However, they do have some areas, like for example, our main place where students kind of gather for lunch. They make it a no phone policy where they have teachers running around so that you have to put your phone away no matter what. And that kind of just touches on to what William's point is like, well, that's just like I feel like you can't really force an environment where you can't have phones, but just also realize that like phones is just a way to kind of like protect ourselves, have open communication with our families. Um, and it's just it doesn't mean that we're like purposely trying to like doesn't mean that we're purposely trying not to be connected with our peers or just be connected with ourselves. It's more like another aspect of it too. Like it's just phones are kind of necessary, especially in situations like these, times like these.
I feel like my situation would be a little different because I'm no longer a Seattle Public School student. But about 2 months ago, there was an incident where a girl was shot at on our campus, and she ended up like running to the nearest dorm and calling OSS and like campus security. And they sent out like two really lengthy emails. Like they were very detailed about like what happened. And like what they're doing to fix it. So they were working with the Seattle Police Department, and then they were like sure to be on top of like investigating and trying to like catch the guy, you know. And I think that was I think that is something that could also be used for Seattle Public Schools is the like communication factor when there's something like so important that happens like for example, when I was in Ballard, so 2 years ago, there was a threat. Someone like wrote on a trash can like that they were threatening to shoot up Ballard the next day, and they wrote like the student's name. So I think they were trying to frame someone. And I emailed about some 44 staff members, like telling them like I'm not going to be coming to school and like bringing it to their attention. And it was interesting to me because they responded saying that they already knew about it and that they were like having meetings and like trying to work on it and stuff. And I don't know what they did after that. I mean, now from what William said, I guess now they're like being a bit performative and trying to fix everything, like trying to make the school safer. But I know when I was at Ballard, they didn't really implement anything. They kind of kept it secret. But I know now, like since I'm in a university, it's a bit different and they kind of have to like tell you and stuff. So yeah.
Kind of touching back onto what Sana was saying, actually my school does have like a large group text with it with the whole school that the school text like safety like that has parents number or all phone numbers. It's like, oh, SAS has gone into like a temporary lockdown. This is happening in the area. So they are very like not yeah, they're very communicative with our parents and they kind of like take an initiative for that. So that's something I really like admire.
I know that you asked about how the steps that the measures that the schools take, how that makes us feel. I know that a lot of students at my school are not very um confident with how like the school's ability to keep students safe. Like it is very there's not really any confidence there. I already talked about the doors. That's like the main thing that they've been doing. And it's if somebody wants to get in, they can just go to a different door. It's not going to stop anybody from getting into the school. So that's just not a good like environment of safety and um what's the word? Comfort, I guess. Like school, you should be able to feel safe and comforted and comfortable. That's the word. And it just doesn't feel like that.
How does it make others feel? The safety policies at their schools?
How does it make like our classmates feel or like what do you mean?
Yeah, like how does it make your classmates feel? How do you feel about them?
Well, the phone policy is definitely not my favorite thing or my like any of our favorite things. But the open communication is definitely something like I know my family loves it. A lot of people do like the fact that our staff safety team is very open and very able to just like even just like a drill, they'll be like, oh, Sasa's gone to a temporary, not temporary, um a a lockdown drill. This is what's happening at this point in time, stuff like that. So it's something that I really do like.
I feel pretty, I honestly feel pretty good with how my school's been handling it. Like I said, they've been working with the police department and like being on top of investigating and also on top of that communicating with us. And they've also increased the patrol cars, like the people who like patrol around campus like constantly. And yeah, so I do feel pretty good. I feel pretty confident that our school is like working towards the better change.
Um, Something that I've heard a lot of students talking about is uh, um, okay, so this doesn't sound super relevant, but it is. Um, a lot of you have probably heard of in the news recently, um, the person Luigi Mangione who he fatally shot the CEO of United Healthcare. And since then, there's been a lot of publicity about that event, and there's been a lot of people criticizing him, a lot of people praising him, and that has made a lot of CEOs of big companies scared that maybe they could be shot. So that provoked a response from NYPD that said that they are considering um, making a special hotline for CEOs that are scared of gun violence threats. And that is just like kind of an insane thing to say that they're making a special hotline for CEOs, for the billionaires that are scared because of one event that happened. Whenever there have been hundreds of shootings where tons of people have died. There are school shootings every year where students die, and they don't have like there are some schools in the country where the police take hours to arrive to the school. So that's something that I've heard a lot of people talking about, how they really see where people's priorities are for who they want to protect from violence, and that just really makes people feel bad about how things are right now.
Yeah, I I think that's a really great point and something I want to kind of shift another question to, kind of in relation. What role do you all think that media and social media play in shaping your peers' attitudes towards gun violence?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me for that question is like seeing like now that there's social media is so accessible for anybody, anybody can post anything there. Um, there's more um visibility, I guess, for the people who have been affected by gun violence. Um, I like people can post their stories and share their stories and speak out using social media. I will say that I this is actually something that we've talked about in one of my LA classes. A topic very similar to this, how social media affects this type of perception for students. And a lot of people have said that they don't really see that type of content in their social media feeds. Um, I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about that. But that's something that a lot of the people that I've heard talk about that say that they don't really see that as much.
Wait, sorry, I cut out. Like I my connection and everything cut out. Could you just someone like refresh what we're talking about?
Yeah, I can repeat the question for you. The question is, what role do you think media and social media play in shaping attitudes towards gun violence?
Um, I've seen a lot of people kind of take gun violence like as a joke on like more specifically on social media because I know social media is like kind of a place where yeah, you can get more visibility, but on the flip side, you will have people like you will I've seen a lot of younger people kind of like hiding behind their screens and like just joking about it, not taking gun violence seriously as they should. And I know also a lot of people like when they tend to go into such extremes, like it's it kind of comes from a place of maybe they've been bullied, maybe like they have like they struggle with their mental health and they don't have support. So it's social media can be a very dangerous place. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I feel like it has its good sides when it comes to raising awareness. Like you can spread awareness about any case of like injustice or gun violence, but then also can definitely be a place where people bully each other, harm each other, and drive each other to going to such extremes.
Yeah, I would like to agree to that because I feel like there's like both sides. Like on the good side, like I feel like social media and like kind of offers like awareness and just like offers a new perspective. And I feel like it's also like a way where kids, students can kind of like come together and just be like, this is a problem, like this needs to change. Seeing like how things from across the country, how this is happening across the country, or like things as local as like Garfield. Like this is just like a pressing matter. And like you see that on social media, TikTok, Instagram, and stuff like that. And how like in the comment sections people are like angry and that just kind of propels you to like this is a problem, like everyone is feeling the same way. But then on the flip side, like it's negative in the same way as it is. I feel like it kind of desensitizes some things because you see it so often. Like you see it so often, it's just like, oh, this is another day in America. Like that's how it is. But that's just not how it should be.
I'm noticing that there's some questions in the chat. Should we take a look at those, or should do we want to keep going with your questions? Okay. Um,
You're exactly right. I got one question for you. I'm combining some of the questions in the chat. This is coming from two of our audience members. It's one question. How do you all feel about increased security and police presence in and around schools? And does it make students feel safer, or does it create other concerns?
so this is actually something that we talk a lot about with NYC and with the NAACP Youth Council. That's NYC. We've uh so okay, so cops in schools has been shown. There's been a ton of studies about this. They've been shown to the majority of the time they don't actually stop any violence or any bad things, like the things that you would want them to be stopping, and instead they extremely disproportionately target students of color that aren't doing anything bad. They're literally just being students. And I don't have the statistics right now. If we're probably not going to be talking about this specific thing in a couple of minutes, which is like how long I would need to find the statistics, but it's extremely apparent how um ineffective it is putting police officers in schools. It just hurts students of color, and it makes students uncomfortable. That's what's the word? There's a word. It's like consensus, basically. That's the I guess consensus works for that.
After
So,
2020,
um, yeah. So, William, would you prefer not to have them there?
In the case of I okay, so the studies do, like, the research does show that the
No,
presence
no,
of
not the
police.
studies. No, I want to know just from you, would you prefer not to have them there?
I would rather not have police in my school.
And do you feel that that's the majority of the thoughts for the student body as a whole?
I know that people of like that students of color there have been what's the word, like surveys for students of color that show that the majority of students of color do not want police in schools. I don't have the information for, I don't know off the top of my head the information for like all students in general, but I could maybe find it if I have a minute. I could look into that.
Okay.
I think having some sort of like body of like security is like just offers some peace of mind for students and for teachers. So I think at one point it's kind of necessary, but for my school after 2020, the George Floyd incident and just like all of those things that was happening with the police departments, our school went into opted into choosing a private security company instead of the police department because controversy, as was William was saying, it's just like a lot of POC kids, especially in my school, felt like just what's going on. It just was like that just seemed the most like sensitive thing to do. So not saying that like security isn't needed, it definitely is, but maybe like if we want to talk about like police discrimination and how they discriminate, how they have their own biases, trainings with those. But I do think police departments and some sort of enforcement are necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to agree with Fiona. I think having like each school could have their own like patrols. Like I said, my school has patrols and they're like driving around campus and stuff. And I know with the high school it can be a little bit more difficult, but I think for sure there should be some sort of like private security that is well trained and is like well specialized so that they can actually like do something like if there is a threat. I know when I was in high school, Ballard, there's like a couple security guards. I don't like know like much about like their trainings and stuff, but there's just about like there's about two, maybe three of them, and they're just kind of like usually walking around the halls and stuff. And I feel like that's good, like at the very least. I'm not saying we should like arm everyone, but I'm just saying like some like private investigators, private like patrols that have like high degree of training and can like defend the school is would be important.
A- Absolutely. And just to chime in a little bit, I know that like for other school districts across Washington State, the views about SROs are a lot different. Um, I know that for example, where Washington Youth Alliance has one of our chapters out in Eastern Washington, the youth do like the SROs, not necessarily for the safety that they provide, but for the companionship that the SRO and the mentorship that the SRO provides for the youth. And I think that's another aspect of the SRO program that is good. And how can we maybe reinvent that to make all students feel safe? Any other thoughts from the panel about SROs? Okay. All righty.
Hi,
My next question is
my name is Zal. I run the kennel over at Roosevelt and Academic Sports Institute at Rainier Beach. I just wanted to add some input, and I appreciate everyone's thoughts, and it's refreshing to hear young people talk about what concerns them and what things are important. Um, in regards to SROs, I think one of the things to think about, one is just what their job is, right? So law enforcement, right? Their job is to enforce law. And so I believe that the challenge sometimes is that steps get missed when when money, my paycheck incentivizes me to do my job, which is to enforce law, right? Sometimes that can be a challenge for someone who's in that position to think about intervention strategies, collaboration, partnership with folks that maybe have relationships with kids or those involved, because you're so conditioned, right? We're conditioned to whatever job and, habits that we form within the job. And so, I've been involved in a number of incidences where SROs were labeling kids gang members that were not gang members, right? But there was also pressure, political pressure to clean the gangs up in the city. And so how do you delineate, right, between what is part of the politics versus what is a true gang member? And I can tell you this, just from being involved in it, the kid was the furthest thing from being a gang member. Matter of fact, being trained in street gangs myself and having experience with street gangs and living around street gangs and in street gangs, there was no sign or anything that the kid had that reflected any connection to a street gang. But yet they were villainized, they were suspended, it was just a ton of, issues that came from it. But a big part of that was because the SRO validated that what they seen was a gang sign, which in fact, if you understand street gangs, there's a lot of things that could be gang signs, but a peace sign also is a gang sign. A rock on sign is also a gang sign. And so you could tell there were implicit biases because all the kids that were associated with it were disciplined were kids of color. And in the same class picture where there was discipline, there were white kids that were throwing up rock on and peace signs, but they didn't get suspended because I guess if you throw a rock on sign and a peace sign and you're white, that can't be a gang sign. And so that's the challenges in some of the things that I've had with SRO officers, which I think to you, William, that there's a reason why kids feel that way. There's a reason why the surveys that you're talking about, and I know those surveys because I've given those surveys and I've read some of the other surveys that have been put out there. It can be a challenge, right? And you never want to enforce
that out.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Something just happened. But anyways, I was just finishing up and just saying that you never want to enforce law if you don't have to, right? And I think that's kind of what I thought I heard you alluding to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Super appreciate it. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead, which kind of relates to this also, ask our next question to the panel, which is, in what ways, and as you all know, as either Seattle students, former Seattle students, or being engaged in the Seattle area at some point, a couple years ago, the Seattle City Council allocated real dollars after the Ingram High School shooting for more mental health support for students. Originally, it was $4.5 million, and now I believe we're at about $18 million for youth mental health services for students. And one of those programs is direct therapy for students. So now students are actually young people aged 14 to 24 can receive free comprehensive therapy online. I believe it's around once a month, and they're entitled to that. And another way that this money has been spent is on community violence intervention programs in local communities. There's a bunch of other ways that it's been spent as well, but I want to turn it over to the panel with my question. In what ways do you all think that improved mental health services among your peers in schools or communities can help prevent gun violence?
I just want to throw this out there. I hate to feel like I'm the only one speaking. I think it's massive because you got folks that deal with trauma, generational trauma. And so to have any type of support to have mental health support services where somebody can feel heard, feel seen, and feel listened to get some things off their chest. I think anytime a young person or has access to that is great. It's needed, and I've seen the impacts of it with the kids that we work with in our program. Just providing them with mental health services and therapy to help them process information that could be damaging if they don't have a soundboard.
I think another part to that is if it's provided by the school, since students, as kids, are at school like 90% of their time, just having that free. Also, number one, therapies are like really expensive. So I know a lot of kids can't have the access to that, but just having that at your own school within reach, just it's like accessible to people. And I just feel like a lot of like things, especially gun violence within students, stems from just like not being heard, like being misunderstood, and just having someone that you can listen to, having someone that listens to you and just kind of like cooperates with you, just definitely like tremendously helps.
I agree. I think just when you're a student and if obviously like you're going through a lot mentally, like there could be a lot going on at home, there could be stuff going on at school, and I think it's really valuable to have someone that will like truly listen to you, that will like keep your secrets if you need them to, like, and just someone to tell you like if you're struggling, if you're thinking like bad thoughts or anything, that whatever you're going through, it doesn't have to continue that way, and that you can actually like find a way out of your situation, no matter how bad it is. I think it's good, and just even if you just want someone to like listen to you, that's usually a big help, and just to kind of like get the weight off of you. And I think a lot of people might not understand just how important that is, but I think a little goes a long way. And yeah, so I think having that resource available is great, and I think I could have probably benefited from that too, when I was in high school, if I like knew there was like a free therapist like that I could just go to. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about the counselors at my school. I know that a lot of students, a lot of kids are really like it's really not normalized to go to counseling or therapy. Like it feels weird or awkward. Like nobody wants to do that, you know? It's not normalized. So to have like all of these the my school does a bunch of announcements at the beginning of the year. They kind of let it go throughout the rest of the year. Um, but they have a lot of announcements at the beginning of the year talking about the counseling center and the people that they have that anybody can just go and talk to. I'd like to see them like I like to see it being normalized more. You know, that's not just something that the school can do. That's something that like I'd like to see society do as a whole. But start small. Um, because that would be really helpful if people could just feel like good about going to see and talk to people because it's really it's such an amazing resource that is underused.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all so much. I think our next question, is kind of going into a few action steps. Not quite there yet, but just want to get us closer to our action steps. How do you all think that either policymakers or people in your school or your parents or any adult should involve young people in discussions about gun violence prevention, both at school, but also, just in communities in general? How do you think that adults should kind of approach that conversation with you all?
So we work for the we mentioned this a few times. We work for the NAACP Youth Council, and we do a lot of presentations like these for community members, educators. We do a bunch of presentations for students. We go to schools and talk to people. And we one of our demands, we have like a list of demands, and one of our demands is about gun violence. And it is we're not all high schoolers. We used to all be high schoolers. Now I'm anyway, we have a bunch of high schoolers and college students in our group. Pretty much everybody that joins starts out in the group as a high schooler. Um, so we have a lot of youth, what's the word? Like interaction. Um, I know of a few other groups that also talk with the youth with like presentations and panels. Um, I know that this is kind of like a specific type of um event, I guess. Like if you're not really into um stopping gun violence or social justice or anything like this, like if you're just like some random person you might not know about Rare or NYC or like this type of event, you might not know to attend that type of thing. So um I just lost my train of thought. I'm gonna come back in a minute after the other people have talked.
Yeah,
Well, for one, I think policymakers, families, teachers need to stop like withholding information from youth, especially when it comes to gun violence, because no matter what, it's like the decisions of the adults are what the students are experiencing firsthand. And at the very least, students deserve to know what's going on. Any information, like if they even if they don't have a lot of information or haven't made a lot of progress on like steps towards like building safer communities, they should at least be constantly communicating that and building that trust so that families know and students know that okay, even if they're still working on it, even if our school is still working on like restoring a healthy safer school, then like at least you have that trust, and knowing that they're putting the effort in. But when you just tell students like, oh, we're working on it, and you're not involving them in the meetings and decision making, then one, your student voice is being shut out, and two, you have no trust. So
Yeah,
I think
I like to agree. Oops, sorry, so I finish off.
no, I was basically done. It's okay.
Okay. I think it starts off with like I fully agree. I think it really does start off like things like these as well, like just allowing like student voices to be heard and allowing them to just like really express how they feel because obviously us as kids we talk amongst each other, oh, this is what's happening, but it's really like who can make the change and if policymakers can really hear the voices, hear the perspectives and make use with it and in the process include the students along the path like along as they do that instead of what somebody was saying shutting us off and be like, oh yep, that's happening, we're talking about it, we're having meetings about it, this is a work in progress, but instead just informing us and making it so like if we want progress, it's gonna have to work both sides. And also in addition to that, it's like we are the future. Like if you really think about it, the future generation isn't gonna consist of just adults. We're gonna be living in the future that the policymakers are working for. And it only makes sense to involve us.
Yeah, and then I also wanted to add that they need to stop trying to look perfect and like just stop being performative because I feel like when you're so performative, um, it's just you're just trying to like look perfect, look like you have it all under control. And I understand you can't just like tell families like you can't just be like, oh, we don't know what we're doing, but at least like being open to hearing student voice and to families, teachers, and making sure that everyone is involved and everyone actually has a say. Because the schools, like Seattle Public Schools, doesn't just belong to like the people making decisions and making policies.
yeah, 100%. As a follow-up question to that, how do you all think that Seattle as a whole and Washington State, but more particularly Seattle, handles student and youth voice? Do you think that it's adequate, the amount of student voice that they receive? And if not, what do you think they should be doing in order to hear all of us?
Um, so you said for Seattle as a whole, yeah?
Yes.
I know that the SPS school board has a what's the word? They consult students basically. I don't remember the name of the group, but they have like an advisory board where they can consult students on some things. I don't know how impactful that is to their decision making, but I know that something that um, students can do to have their voices heard is they can testify at school board meetings if they want to influence that. I don't um, have that's the most experience that I have with specifically the school board. I don't know much things about like the mayor, the governor, anything like that. Um, I've mostly just worked with the within the school district, but I know that there is a lot of opportunity for student voice to be heard. So that's I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I was gonna say Seattle as a whole, I don't really like know much, but like I feel like kind of touching on to what we were talking about earlier is like kind of like funding more mental health services. Um, just like simple, like whether that be like within schools, but kind of just making the topic of gun violence more um public or just like just putting more awareness around it. However that may be.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it's hard to talk for all of Seattle as a whole, but I know I've had a lot of opportunity to kind of like have my voice be heard, and I think we've reached a point where Seattle has finally seen like nothing's gonna change unless they start making change, start like working towards change, and definitely like youth voice is youth are definitely getting like more say in the way the district is working. Like William said about the testifying at like the school board and stuff. And I also know that there are like youth members on the school board. And so they've just been like implementing ways like that to get youth voice more out there. So it's not perfect, but I do think it is Seattle is kind of working towards better.
After thinking about it a little bit more, also I would like to add like maybe putting more background checks on who gets the guns, how they can access it, like what that means, like if like the access to lethal means that like you're if the parent has like plenty of young children, like I just feel like there should just be more investigations or more precautions that goes into who can buy a gun and who can access it. Because how are kids, especially when it comes to kids, how are kids being the one shooting each other?
Yeah, Fiona, that's a really good point. And actually something I want to move us to. So thank you so much. My next question for y'all, how do you think that leaders can make our communities, youth communities, safer when it comes to guns? What do you think they can do? I can start off with some things that they've done in the past, and then I'll have you all look to the future about what they should do. In the past, local organizations have pushed the state government to do a lot of action, while the federal government has all but stalled in their gun violence prevention efforts. Washington State is a very good state when it comes to gun violence prevention measures, but we still have a lot of work to do. While everywhere else increased in homicide and suicide rates for youth, we actually went down for the second year in a row, which is really exciting. But the number is still too high of folks shot with a gun in Washington state. So, with that being said, policy wise, there's been a lot done. I'll link in the chat kind of what's been done, but an assault weapons ban. There has been some waiting periods and training requirements. There has been some place-based restrictions about where you can actually have a firearm. There have been a couple initiatives and dozens of more laws that I haven't mentioned that, again, like I said, I'll drop in the chat. But, what as students do you all think policymakers can do, both on like the state level and federal level to reduce gun violence? And this doesn't have to be super technical, right? It can just be something that you all feel passionate about related to gun violence prevention or something else along that field. I'm going to start actually with William.
Okay, so the easy answer is just to I mean like to limit who can get a gun. Like you just listed a bunch of different ways that people have done it in the past. And that is really the biggest cause of like the biggest reason that this happens is because people can do it. And if what's the yeah, so if we limit that, that would be great if the people in charge of like if the policymakers and the law writers were doing that. The US is the only place where this happens like this. Some of you might remember a couple years ago there was a shooting in New Zealand, and within like a day or two they had completely rewritten their laws to make it harder to get guns if you fit certain criteria and if you like shouldn't be in possession of a firearm. A ton of countries proper um have proper laws for protecting people from gun violence, and the US could very, very easily follow suit. Um, yeah, that's the easy thing.
Maybe more like education around just like I wouldn't say the risks of guns because I feel like everyone knows that, but just like more education on just like Cheatham, you said, like training on like how you're supposed to use this, when you're supposed to use this, like just that, and also and as a response to that, like if you are caught, if you do something wrong with this, there should be more, I want to say, repercussions. So people just like are like held accountable for their actions.
I want
Yeah,
to add on, sorry, I just want to add on to what Fiona said really fast. I know that recently there was a shooting where the parents of the student that did the shooting were held responsible also. And they were charged with like letting that happen. I don't remember the specific charge, but it was they faced consequences also, and that's helping set a precedent for doing that in the future and holding the parents responsible, which would be huge for stopping um gun violence. It wouldn't be like 100% stopping everything, but it would be very helpful.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with both what William and Fiona said. I was reading actually about gun violence and just kind of looking at some stats, and it was interesting because most of the school shooters don't even like have the gun in their name. They get the guns from like a relative or like a friend. And it's interesting because that means like there's a chance that someone else already knew, like there's a possibility that someone else already knows that what the person is going to do with the gun. And I think it's important to also teach youth that if they hear something, even if it's like as a joke or anything like that, they're reporting that. Because most of the time when there is a school shooting, someone else, like a student within the school, knows or like was told about it but didn't report it. And as a cost, we have the tragedies of like so many youth dying. So I think those are just both very important ways. But first and foremost, we need stricter gun laws. And then I was also thinking we could have maybe in schools or in like just certain areas where like guns are not like allowed. I don't know how like if how that could like be detected, but like schools especially would be like the top place where like no weapons, no firearms are allowed. And like having them like I don't want to say searching students, but like having a system in place that will ensure that no one is coming into the building with any like hazardous weapons.
It's really great points, y'all. Thanks so much for sharing. I think I heard a lot of great things about preventable or actions folks can take to prevent gun violence, but a lot of it really felt like it's out of our control. It's out of our hands, right? And a lot of it feels like we're waiting for the state and the federal government to actually do something about this crisis, right? Where, in the end, there are a lot of ways that we as individuals can help prevent gun violence. And I think a big one that the panel mentioned is, encouraging the youth in your life to report something if they hear about it, even if they are just rumors. Because all rumors have a shred of truth to them, and that can be the difference between life and death. And so that really is important. And I think if it's one thing that y'all are going to take away today, it would be that. But I want to ask our panel, one last question, which is, what actions do you think that the people in this room can take to prevent gun violence in their communities? William, I'm going to start again with you.
Okay. I know that some of the people talking here have already mentioned this, but like just raising awareness about this, making sure that people are informed, that helps people, and also the counselors are a big thing. If you can't like actively stop people from getting guns, then like having counselors is one of the most helpful things that will like improve everybody's what's it called, like everybody's mental health, even for the people that are like not like for here's what I'm trying to say, for preventing gun violence, and also in the aftermath of it for people who have been through or have been connected to instance of violence like this, then they can help like counselors can help them get through it and process it and move on. And it's just counselors are really helpful resources to have in schools. So supporting that is something that you can do. You can testify at school board meetings. You can write to your school districts. I don't know if everybody here is specifically from Seattle or from kind of all over the place, but that's a tangible thing.
Adding on to what Willie was saying, I feel like every one of us can kind of just be like that person for one other person, like be a person like they can trust and open up to, like being an open person to talk to, because you never know, like kind of regarding mental health, like you never know what they're gonna do, you never know what their next step is, and whether that be like pick up a gun and do something, just like being an open person to kind of understanding, like now that you guys kind of have more better understanding of like the youth perspective and kind of like the impact of mental health and stuff like that, kind of just being that open person. But in addition, kind of just like kind of what William was saying, how we don't, yeah, wherever you guys are from, you guys can be kind of like that voice of action, since Seattle is like one of the more progressive cities, especially in Washington, but kind of just being the more like a advocator for minimizing gun violence and kind of just like lowering it down.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know that I'm pretty sure we do have a couple of educators here, so it would be, I think, an action that y'all could take would be to tell like your students, like kind of have like a lesson and just telling your students that if they're going through any sort of like mental health issue or anything, like it doesn't even need to be in relation to gun violence, but just that you're someone like they can come to, that they can talk to. Um, Trying not to be like, try not to have too much of like a power dynamic over your students, but like allowing yourself to be more vulnerable and letting your students know that you're someone that they can come to and that you won't do them wrong with any problems they come to you with. And I also feel like just kind of like telling them like if they do see something or if they are seeing anyone get bullied. I know that's such a classic thing, but letting them know that they need to actually say something, because a lot of people will just be bystanders, like they'll just be enablers if they see anything, and you never know what could happen from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you all just heard from our youth panel. I am going to drop right now in the chat some action items about how you can take action right now to prevent gun violence. One being to understand the facts and solutions. The Alliance for Gun Responsibility is a great resource in Washington State to understand things. Everytown for Gun Safety is also a good one nationally if you're not located in Washington State. If you want to volunteer with local organizations, I put a couple of links there. One is for Moms Demand Action. One is for Grandmothers Against Gun Violence. The third one is for the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. And all of them have simple actions that you can take, whether that be writing a letter, sending an email that they already have typed up for you, or making a quick phone call. These things really, really make a difference. I'm saying this as a government affairs manager, as a lobbyist for a youth organization. These actions actually help and propel things to the victory line and to the finish line. These things are tangible. They'll make you feel good having completed them, and they will help end gun violence both in Washington State and around the country. So I want to thank you all so much for coming today and holding space for these wonderful, wonderful youth leaders. And with that, I'll pass it over to Robin to do a final closing.
Cheaton, thank you so much. I think our panelists did a great job. They are articulate and willing to share and putting themselves out there. Thank you very much. And we are going to, I think Semi said it best when she said, we are the future. We are going to be the ones who are going to be making the laws. And so we are going to be part of this. And that can't be said enough or loud enough, and so true. And it really makes the rest of us feel really great that you are our future. And I'm really proud of all of you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, other participants, for learning and being engaged and hopefully linking onto those links that Cheaton put in the chat for call to action items, because we need to take a step further. It's one thing to learn about it, but it's something else to take this next step and do something about it. So please click onto those links, and like Cheaton said, the work's done for you. They have letters that you can send that's already done. Make yourselves known, make your voices heard. It makes a huge difference. This session has been recorded and it will be on the RARE link under open discussions, hopefully within a week, 2 weeks at the most. We'll also have a written recap of the whole thing. Bruce Johnson is our in-house recapper. He does a great job with the blog. It will also be in our newsletter. So thank you for that. And thank you for checking back. There are all kinds of ways that you have the opportunity to make a difference working with RARE. So if that's anything you'd like to do, under the About tab in the RARE website is what can I do to help? And you can put your name and address in there and we will get a hold of you and find a great place for you to land. There are lots of different committees to work on and we'd love to have you. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great January.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, guys. It's a great job.
Samaya.